Have you ever reached a point in your life where you look around and realize that nothing is necessarily wrong, but something just doesn't feel right anymore? That is a strange place to be because from the outside, your life, it might look the exact way that it should. You go to work every day, you pay your bills, and you handle your responsibilities. You keep showing up for the people that depend on you. If somebody else were to look at your life, they would say that you're doing pretty well for yourself. But that's not what you feel on the inside. Maybe you spent years chasing a promotion because you were convinced once you got there, everything would finally click. Maybe you worked your way out of debt, finally bought the house, started a family, or you were chasing a goal that you were convinced that would change the rest of your life. Or maybe your life just didn't unfold the way you pictured it would. Whatever your story is, there's this quiet realization that starts to creep in. The future that you have been working towards, it doesn't feel the way you thought it would. And that's confusing because it doesn't look like a crisis. You're not falling apart or making reckless decisions. You're not even waking up in the morning hating your life. You just can't shake that feeling that the life that you were building, it no longer fits the version of you that you've become. And if that is where you're at right now, then you're not as lost as you think you are. See, most people assume that feeling lost means they don't know what they want. But I don't think that's true for a lot of men, because there was a season in your life where the path, it made sense. You knew what you were working towards, and the future in front of you, it actually excited you. Maybe it was you getting that promotion, or making enough money that you could finally breathe again. It could have been you buying your first home, getting married, raising your kids, or becoming the kind of man your family could depend on. Those weren't bad goals. They gave you direction because they matched the man that you were at that time. The problem is that life never leaves you unchanged while you're chasing those goals. While you're busy building a life, life is busy rebuilding you. The responsibilities, they get heavier. You experience some success, but it doesn't feel the way you thought it would. You lose people that you thought would always be there. You make mistakes, and then you recover from setbacks. Your kids, they grow older, and your priorities shift. Without even realizing it, the experiences that you were living, they start changing the person who was living them. And most of the time, you don't even notice it. And then one day, you're driving home from work. You're sitting at a red light, and it hits you. The future that you've been chasing, it no longer fits the man who's sitting behind the steering wheel. And that's where the disconnect begins. Because you're still following the same map, but the man that's holding it, he's not the same man who drew the map. So naturally, something starts to feel off. Not because you became lazy or lost your ambition. It feels off because the direction that once gave your life meaning doesn't reflect the man that you are now. And when you don't understand that that's what's happening, it's easy for you to mistake those feelings for being lost. So why does this season of your life feel so uncomfortable? Because even when your old life no longer fits, it's still familiar. And that has a way of making us feel safe, even when it doesn't make us feel happy. Because part of you knows that you've already changed. You know the goals that used to drive you, they no longer carry the same weight. You know that you look at life differently than you did 5 years ago. But another part of you keeps trying to go back to the old version that had everything figured out. You tell yourself that maybe I need to get my motivation back. Maybe I need to work harder, or I'm just in a rut. Not because those things aren't the actual answer, but they are familiar. It's easier for you to admit that you've lost motivation than it is to admit that you've been chasing a future that you've outgrown. Because if the future that you've been working towards no longer fits, then what are you supposed to replace it with? Most of us weren't taught how to live in that question. We were taught to have a plan, to know where we're going, and to have the next 5 years already mapped out. So when life puts you in a season where you don't know those answers anymore, we assume that something is wrong with us. But what if nothing is wrong with us? Maybe you're just standing in the space between who you used to be and who you're becoming. And that's why so many people get stuck right here. Some bury themselves in their work because as long as they're busy, they don't have to think about the questions that are waiting for them when they get home. Some people, they chase one goal after another, hoping that the next achievement brings back those feelings that they once felt. While others, they spend years waiting for this lightning bolt moment where everything just makes sense. But clarity, it rarely arrives like that. Think about every major change that you've ever gone through. You didn't understand it while you were living it. You understood it once you already walked through it, and life has always worked that way. Which means maybe the clarity that you're waiting for is not supposed to happen before the next step. Maybe it's waiting on the other side of it. You're not standing between certainty and uncertainty. You're standing between the man you used to be and the man you're still becoming. And this is where I think people accidentally make things harder for themselves. The moment that life stops feeling right, they want to fix it as quickly as possible. You start thinking that maybe I need a different job, I need to move, or maybe I need to set bigger goals or push myself harder. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable because nobody enjoys uncertainty. So your instinct is to replace that uncertainty with another destination. And that's where most people make the wrong decision. Think about how many people spend years climbing a ladder just to make it to the top and realize that it was leaning against the wrong building. The problem, it wasn't that they didn't work hard enough. The problem was that they didn't stop long enough to question whether they're still climbing towards a life that they actually wanted. Instead of listening to what this season is trying to tell them, they panic. They fill every empty space with another goal because movement feels safer than uncertainty. They never stop long enough to ask one simple question: is the future that I'm building fitting the man that I've become? Because if the answer is no, then working harder won't fix it. Working faster won't fix it. Setting another goal won't fix it. If you're following a future that no longer belongs to you, then all you're doing is getting there sooner. The real mistake, it isn't moving too slowly. The real mistake is believing that you have to force clarity before you give yourself permission to grow into it. Because clarity, it isn't something that you manufacture overnight. It's something that you discover little by little. Till one day you realize you're not becoming the man you wanted to be. You're becoming the man you were meant to be. So what do you do when you realize that your old life no longer fits? I think the first thing you do is accept that this problem isn't something that you're going to fix over a weekend. I know that's frustrating because all of us want certainty. We want to be able to sit down with a notebook and have a plan and know that we have everything figured out. We want somebody to tell us what our purpose is, what career we should pursue, and what next decision we should make. But life rarely gives us that. The next chapter of your life, it doesn't usually start with one big moment. It begins with a series of small, honest decisions. It's choosing to pay attention to what you give your peace to instead of wanting everybody's approval. It's noticing which parts of your life they leave you feeling excited and alive, and which parts leave you feeling like you're just going through the motions. It's having the courage to admit that you've changed, even though the people around you still see you as the person that they've always known you as. They're afraid that letting go of an old dream means that all those years they spent chasing it were wasted, but they weren't. Maybe that career taught you discipline. That relationship taught you what really matters. Maybe those financial struggles, they taught you resilience. Maybe you becoming a father, it changed the way you define success. Every season, it gave you something, even the painful ones. But the mistake is thinking that you have to keep living for this dream that no longer feels true to you just because you've already invested so much time. You don't have to resent the person that you used to be. You don't have to erase your past. You definitely don't have to pretend that those years didn't matter. That man, he got you here, and he made the best decisions with the life, the wisdom, and the perspective that he had at the time. But he's not the one that has to live this next chapter. You are. And the next chapter of your life, it's not asking you to become a completely different person. It's asking you to become a more honest one. A man who's willing to admit that he changed, who's willing to let his life change with him. Maybe that's why your old life doesn't fit anymore. Not because you failed, and not because you missed your chance. And it's definitely not because everybody else figured their life out before you did. Maybe it's because you've been measuring your life against a future that was created by a version of you that no longer exists. And if that's true, then maybe the goal isn't to get your old life back. Maybe the goal is to stop asking yesterday's version of you to decide tomorrow's future. I know that's uncomfortable because we all want a map. We all want to know where we're going. We would all rather have somebody tell us that here's the next 10 years of your life if you just follow these steps. But that's not how the best chapters of your life usually begin. Most of the time, they begin with uncertainty. They begin with one honest decision, one opportunity, one step that doesn't seem like it's life changing in the moment, but it does slowly start to change the direction of your life. Years later, you look back and realize that the moment that you thought you were losing yourself was actually the moment that you stopped pretending to be somebody that you weren't anymore. So, if you've been asking yourself, now what? Maybe now what isn't a question you should fear anymore. Maybe it's an invitation. An invitation to stop trying to become the man that you thought you were supposed to be and start becoming the man that you've been growing into all along. Because your old life, it doesn't fit anymore. But not because you lost your way, but because you've outgrown the person who started this journey. Now that's not something you need to mourn, but maybe something you need to be grateful for.